you do go up, they're just going to look at you like you're a bit weird, and they'll just be a bit awkward until your drinks are ready, and they'll still carry your drinks to the table while you walk behind them. Hello and welcome to episode 80 of A Sideways Life podcast, the honest guide to living and working abroad. I'm Leanne.
And I'm Al.
And welcome back.
Hello.
Hi.
So this is a bit of a strange episode. Well, not a strange episode, but this is the first time I think we've had a listener request for an episode. Is that right?
We have. Yeah.
So we've got Mai and Tom.
Yes.
And they're kind of relatively new listeners, and they've asked us. They're off to Spain, where we are currently, and they've asked us about what are the cultural norms of living in Spain. And well, I'm guessing they're going to be working a little bit, but they're mainly like working freelancing, aren't they, or with their own business?
I think so.
So we thought, what an interesting episode we're going to do. So we spent a few hours the other night when we were sitting in Spain. In fact, it was the hottest night, I think, of the last 20 days, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was warm. It was, 9 o'clock and still about 38?
Yeah, it was.
It was a lot. But we spent some time, we made some notes, and actually we had so many different things to share about our experience of living in Spain that we're actually splitting this into 2 episodes.
Yep.
So Tom and Mai, you asked for 1 episode. We're giving you 2. Lucky devils.
2 for the price of 1. That'll be in episode 81, which will be released next week. So we've got a lot to get through. So shall we just crack on?
I think we should. And I think before we start, we should preface this by saying this is our experience as Brits being in Spain. We have lived here for 4.5 years, spent about 6-ish months in Spain after we stopped living here. We've mainly been based in Andalusia, so that might skew some of the things we chat about. So if you are Spanish and listening,
Hola.
This is just our perspective, just our opinion, just what we think. This isn't to say it's right or wrong. It's just our experience of it. Please correct us if you think we've misinterpreted anything, and educate us further. What have we missed out that you think is a particular quirk of life in Spain?
Yep, you can email us sidewayslife@gmail.com, or you can just search for us, A Sideways Life, on Instagram on your message, and Leanne will be taking care of those DMs. So just to give you a bit of context, there's kind of 8 categories that we've split this up into. I'll give you the categories so you know what's coming up. So the first we're going to talk about is basically culture of Spain. Then we're going to talk about eating and drinking in Spain. Of course we are, because that's mainly about 80% of what we do is eating and drinking in Spain. Then we're going to talk about the language. Then we're going to talk about transport. Finally, weather and living, then shopping. And then there's 2 sort of bonus rounds here, which is things we can't get a head around as British people coming to Spain. Again, no criticism, just stuff that just was very foreign, literally and figuratively to us. And then things to avoid specifically as a Brit, but probably as any kind of tourist or guest of the country.
I think that's exactly it, isn't it? Regardless of what we share today, we are very aware that we are guests in any country that we visit that isn't our native home. And therefore we try to exercise the right amount of respect for that. So yeah, remember that if you are going to a new country, either on holiday or to live and work abroad, you are a guest. So be respectful, be open to learning, and just don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick is great advice.
First rule, don't be a dick. Of life, actually, let alone traveling.
So should we go through quickly these things that we've thought about in terms of culture?
Yeah, so the first one, and again, I mean, no disrespect to the men of Spain. This might just be my experience, maybe particularly in the country. And it's certainly not a unique thing to Spain. There are many other countries we've been to where we've experienced this as well. I've experienced this. It can be fairly traditional in the views, I guess, of kind of roles or status of men and women. And we have experienced in Spain me asking a question and then the answer being directed to Al, which is a little bit odd. And I know we have other expat friends that experience this in other places as well. And you do have to kind of, do what you can respectfully to challenge that type of behavior, but it can be a bit weird initially.
Yeah, and you often find that that if Leanne's asking a question, then you might find that someone's going to talk over her directly at me. I mean, the other thing which confuses the hell out of people is that I tend to drink sort of medium white wine. Leanne drinks a really heavy Rioja. They bring it over to the table. They put the Rioja next to me and the sweet white wine for the lady. And obviously we just swap it around. That blows their minds. And also when we come to pay, often Leanne uses our joint card, but she has the card with her. So they give the bill to me and Leanne pays. No?
They do tend to give the bill to the man, which I'm not complaining about, but it's on the joint card, so you know.
Exactly. So the second thing is that fans, as in like those Andalusian dotted fans you see, they're real thing.
Like the hand fans.
That's it, the hand fans, the ones that, you know, I don't know how to describe it. You flick it out. Leanne's really good at doing it. She can do it with one hand and flick it out and go. So those are definitely a real thing, which it kind of was a bit strange, but then we realised, of course it is, because people are hot and the older ladies need to cool down.
I think that's it. You imagine it to be something you just see on movies, or it's just for flamenco dancers, but no, it is a genuine way of life. Every woman has a fan in a handbag.
And quite often, some of the older ladies, I think I'm right in thinking that traditionally the older ladies dress in black for mourning for a few years after their husbands die. So you can imagine being in black, a full, long, black length dress when it's 38 degrees outside. You definitely need a fan.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I think the next one is religion is big in Spain. And that might not be too much of a surprise. It is dominantly a Catholic country and has lots of history with the Catholic Church, but it is still a big thing, and not even necessarily in terms of everyone you see will go to church on a Sunday, but religion plays a big role in the way of life, in the festivals that happen, in everything. It is a big part of life. And with that as well comes a level of respect that you have to show if you're going to a church or a cathedral. And there are lots of church and cathedrals that are open to tourists just to have a look around. Our advice would be respectful. There will be people in there worshipping. Bear that in mind. Stay quiet. Don't take photographs. If you absolutely have to, certainly don't do it with the flash. And if you are dressed for summer, bear in mind that it is respectful to cover up. So being covered your knees and shoulders as well, particularly for women.
Definitely. This next one is beautifully, wonderfully lovely, and that is that but people still say hello to you. So you'll go into a lift and someone will say, you know, sort of hola or buenos dias, buenas tardes. By the way, in terms of language, we will come on to language properly, but generally buenos dias is anything up to about sort of 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then buenas tardes is kind of up to about 8 o'clock in the evening. And that's good afternoon, up to 8 o'clock in the evening. And buenas noches is usually from 8, 9 onwards, isn't it?
Yeah, and even then, buenas noches is really more to say good night. Like there isn't really an equivalent of good evening, I don't think. I think I heard people say even buenas tardes even later into the thing. But yeah, buenas noches is more late evening, or if you are saying goodbye.
And you'll find that if you, like we have a dog, as you probably know by now, you walk along with a dog and a fellow dog walker will just say hello to you. And it's lovely. It just feels very traditional and very cool.
Absolutely. And then the opposite of tradition from a Brit's perspective, did you know, listeners, that if you're invited to somebody's birthday in Spain, they pay?
The person whose birthday
The person whose birthday it is. Blew our mind. We got invited probably when we were in Granada. So we're talking, 2016-ish? 15 even maybe. Got invited by somebody we'd met to their birthday. We offered to buy them a drink, and he honestly looked at us as if we had two heads. Was like, what are you talking about? The drink's from me. It's my birthday. And we were like, no, friend. That's not how it works in the UK. And he was like, well, that's a much better way of doing it. Why am I buying all the drinks? Like, I know.
And I think one of the last things we want to talk about in the culture is that people are late, and it's not a rudeness thing. It's just that when we pointed our Spanish lessons, someone said, look, what you need to understand is someone says they'll meet you at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They probably mean 1:30 to 2 if they turn up at all. And it's not a rudeness thing. It's the culture that, you know, yes, you'll make plans, but they're very flexible because things come up.
They do. And that might be a bit more of a country thing, to be fair. But yes, if you are in the country and expect to meet somebody at a particular time, give them half an hour before you leave. They're probably still on their way.
Definitely.
And again, yeah, one of the last things in culture, and I guess this kind of ties in with the birthday thing, when it comes to stag do's and hen do's, you do see them. And it looks very much like they do in the UK. Everyone's dressed up, matching T-shirts, speakerphones, very energetic and lively. But it isn't really about drinking. It's more about eating and playing games or doing sports, and you'll see a big group of lads there that will nurse a glass of water and a small beer for an hour. So yeah, culturally it's very, very different, the old stag do.
It is. We were in Malaga about 2 weeks ago, saw a stag do. The stag was dressed up as a unicorn, which seems to be a thing. And also, it's quite funny when you see it when a stag do meets up with a hen do. That's quite fun when you see that happen. But I went in I had a photograph taken with them. I looked like their dad as well, which is very embarrassing. And I said, look, I said to the waiter, can I buy a round for them? And he said, yeah. It's like, was it una ronda? I think was what it was classed as, what the actual term was. And he said, yeah, no problem. Went round, got everyone a drink, and it came to about €9. And it's like, well, yeah, they've only had half, a third of a lager. It's €1 each. So so it's very, very different. The other thing is that this is going to come 9 to 12 months after the stag do, is that it's all about kids. Very, very big family, family orientated. A lot of younger people will have kids quite early on, and it's very, very normal. And so therefore, most of the day, everything's set up around kids. So you'll be sitting having dinner at 11 o'clock at night. Don't be surprised to see hundreds of kids running around, playing, shouting, screaming, which we'll come on to in a minute because of the weather. So don't be too surprised if you see that. It's not bad parenting. It's just the fact that the kids have probably slept during the day.
And that indeed is our last point under culture. And again, this may be more of a southern thing, more of a country thing, but siestas really are a real thing. And it's taken seriously. Shops close. People are quiet. The shops that do remain open, the bigger supermarkets, do enforce what they call a quiet hour, which is usually without kids and quiet shopping, no noisy groups. But that is the point. Things will close usually between 2 and 5 or 2:30 and 5:30. Rest will be had. It's not even necessarily about sleep. It might be about going paddleboarding or going to the beach for a few hours, but it is rest time. And that is because then once 5:30 hits, they're back out, they're doing activities, they're having a late dinner, they're going to be noisy until midnight. It is not unusual to be sat in your house, particularly if you're in a built-up area, and hear lots of hustle and bustle until midnight on a Tuesday.
And also bear in mind, they do go back to work. A lot of people will go back to work at 5:30 till 8. So it's not necessarily about, like you say, it's a different way of doing things. That's to avoid the heat. So on to category number 2, which is eating and drinking, our favorite thing. The one thing I'm going to kick off with here is that you'll find that in cafes and bars, you'll see lots of napkins on the floor. It's not because they can't be bothered to sweep up. It's because that is apparently a sign that it's a good meal. Is you finish it, you wipe your face, and then you throw the napkin on the floor. So the more napkins on the floor, the better the cafe or the bar is, or the better the food is.
Yeah, which seems strange to us, but what a great sign of respect. That was so good. I throw my napkin down to you. The next thing, I guess, sticking with kind of restaurant etiquette, the table service is excellent, and the vast majority of places you go into, whether it'll be a bar or a restaurant or a cafe, will be table service. You don't need to go to the counter or the bar to order your drinks. You certainly don't go up to pay. And if you do go up, they're just going to look at you like you're a bit weird, and they'll just be a bit awkward until your drinks are ready, and they'll still carry your drinks to the table while you walk behind them. Table service is a thing. You don't really go to the counter or the bar.
Exactly. And I know you know this, but don't be clicking your fingers. Don't be that person. They are professional waiters and waitresses over here. They are fantastic at their job. When it comes down to it then, so you come to pay your bill. You come to pay your bill and you leave a tip. Well, the customary tip is if it's just a coffee or a drink, then you can just round up by a few pennies. Maybe 50 cents, €1, something like that. If it's a food, then 10% is generally acceptable. If you tip 15, you'll get a hug. But 10% is acceptable. If you've had a great meal, then, feel free to tip more. But don't feel like you have to tip 15%, 20% if you're from America and Canada, because that's not necessarily a thing over here.
Yes. And going back to what you were saying earlier about good cafes and restaurants will often have napkins on the floor. Well, a great restaurant won't always look the part from the outside either. Some of the best restaurants we've been to look just quite average and a little bit, dare I say, run down from the outside. But we'll serve some of the best food and drinks that you will ever experience in Spain. So don't judge a book by its cover. Go in, have a drink, have a tapas, and then make up your mind.
Talking of having a drink, then in the UK, it's very, very, I don't know if it's the same in America and Australia, but if you order a glass of wine, then it might be €3 for a glass of wine or €7 for the bottle. And they're obviously trying to get you to buy the bottle. Over here, there is a much more relaxed outlook towards drinking. So a glass of wine will be exactly what the bottle cost divided by whatever 175 over 750 is. So don't feel like it's cheaper to buy the bottle. And in fact, people, you'll see men just go in, women will go in, have a glass of wine, that'll be it. Or maybe have 3 or 4 glasses of wine, but they won't bother necessarily buying the bottle because it's not always cheaper.
Yes, and I think my only add-on to that would be that typically that there's usually a really great wine selection by the glass, but the more expensive the bottles get, then that is when you're going to pay for a bottle, not by the glass. But honestly, there are very few restaurants where that is even necessary. The quality of wine by the glass is great. Continuing on the theme of having lunch or dinner, food is for sharing. And we learnt this the hard way by ordering what we thought traditionally, a starter, a main, and a pudding each. It is far too much food, simply because the tradition, the way of doing things in Spain is to share dishes, to share platos. And I think we actually talked about this in the food and drink episode that we did in Spain. So go back and listen to that if you want to hear more. But yes, generally you're ordering dishes for the table, not for yourself.
And talking of eating, then your dinner, every meal is late according to what most people eat in the UK, the US. I'm not sure about Australia, actually, but certainly that it's unusual to go for dinner before 10 p.m. Often people will be ordering the main courses or having the main courses at 11 p.m. at night. That's 11 p.m. at night. Everyone knows that. Lunch tends to be about 2 till 4. And breakfast, often people go to work, do an hour's work, and then go out for breakfast, maybe 10 o'clock. And they'll tend to have things like tostada, which comes with a little, it does come with jam, but also quite common is to have a tomato, I think it's called rallado, where it's basically just liquidized tomatoes that you spread on your toast, a bit of olive oil and a bit of salt. Sounds a bit weird, but it's really, really, really nice. So you're going to be eating a bit later than what you thought. But don't go out for dinner at 7 o'clock because one, you'll be on your own, and 2, people will look at you and go, what the hell are you doing? Why are you here?
Speaking of delicious food, one of the things that we notice is how people describe good food. And you get the ones that you'll understand, muy bien, muy buenas, very good, very good. But some people describe food as muy rico, which directly translates as very rich. And that direct translation in English is sometimes used to describe something that is tasty, but too much to have in one dish. It's too rich, or it's very rich. In Spain, that is one of the best compliments you can give to the chef, is the food is muy rico.
Definitely. Another thing is when you order more drinks, then they'll bring the drinks to you and they'll take whatever's left in your glass. Even if it's like half full, they'll take it away. So in the UK, you tend to pre-order drinks. You go, right, I'm a third of the way through my pint, or third left, so I'll order another one. Just bear in mind that if you leave your glass unattended, then it will be taken back and binned.
Yes, it will. And talking about drinks after dinner, don't be fooled into thinking you're going to be a party animal if you're up until 1 a.m. having a drink after a marvellous food. There's a saying in Spain that is if you're home by 2 a.m., you've only gone out for dinner. So if you are looking for a bit of nightlife, if you're a bit younger than we are or a bit more energetic than we are and you're looking for a night out, have that siesta friend, because you will be out until 4, 5 a.m. at least.
When I'm talking of going out and nipping around, it's okay to stop in one place and have a little tapa or 2 tapas. It's perfectly okay to do that. In the UK, you couldn't imagine going to a restaurant saying, can I have 2 starters? Thanks, can I have the bill? And go to somewhere else and have 2 starters. But it's perfectly okay over here. And certain places are very famous for a certain type of tapas. So that's perfectly okay.
And then talking about things that aren't perfectly okay. Often in Spanish restaurants in the UK, and I'm sorry if there are any Spanish people listening, cover your ears because this one might hurt. But in a Spanish restaurant in the UK, typically you get a little pot of olive oil and a little pot of vinegar, sometimes together, and you get your bread and you dunk it in and you mix it around and then you eat it. That is not the purpose of bread. It's not the purpose of oil and vinegar. Oil and vinegar is for your salad. Your bread is for scooping your food up onto your fork or for mopping up the sauces of your dish.
So coming to the last couple on the food and drink, we need to talk about spirit measures. Now, what's interesting is that there's a Weights and Measures Act of 1968, I think it was. I used to be a pub landlord, so I should know this, but I've probably got that year wrong. And there's a Weights and Measures Act, which means that in the UK, and I'm guessing most of the other parts of the West, you will be... if you want a shot of vodka, you'll get exactly 25 milliliters, and then you'll get a multiple thereof. Whereas in Spain, there doesn't seem to be that thing. So they'll come over and they'll bring a bottle and they'll bring you your glass, your ice, and then the bottle of vodka, gin, whatever you're drinking, and they'll pour it from the bottle. And they tend to count somewhere between 7 and 9 pours, which roughly works out as a double to a triple.
Yes, for domestic spirits or non-premium spirits, it's a 7 to 9 pour.
Yes, so if you're asking for Hendrix, for example, that'll be carefully measured out into 25 mil. If you're asking,
or they'll do like a 4 or 5 pour.
Yeah, and then if you're asking for a domestic, as the answer is, like Larios, which is a domestic gin from Spain, they'll just pour it. So, and you can ask them to stop. Often they'll look at you and laugh because they're expecting you to say stop, and they keep going. So there's a bit less duty on alcohol in Spain, so they do tend to pour a bit more.
Yeah, and then we were told this fact. We believe it. Please, if you think it's not true, tell us, or please confirm it for us. Our understanding is in Spain, you don't need a license to sell alcohol, but you do need a license to sell coffee. Coffee is taken very, very seriously. There are many different types of Spanish coffee, and we have talked about this on the previous episode, so I won't go into it. But yeah, if you're going to order a coffee, just think about your preferred coffee to milk ratio. And once you've figured that out, you'll know which coffee to order.
Talking of which, we've noticed that that coffees tend to be around about the same price in a village. So you won't go to one place it'll be £2.20, another place it'll be £1.50. Generally, it sort of feels like it's set, and they all agree that a café con leche is £1.60, a cortado is £1.10, that kind of thing. Anyway. And so the other thing about different regions is that you can have either the same name for a food or a drink, that down south means one thing and in the north means another. Or you can have the same food that one village, Morcilla, for example, which is like a blood sausage, like black pudding if you're from the UK. Then Morcilla from Burgos, I think, is made with rice. And from where's the other place, Leah? Do you remember?
I think it's Mother Burgos is the specialist one because it's made with rice. And everywhere generally it's made with onions.
Made with onion. So you tend to find that, and you'll also tend to find that a region will have a nickname for a food that might not translate exactly as what you think it is. I can't think of any examples off my head, but there's lots of things we've gone, what the hell is that? Translate it.
For example, they have like caña de cerdo.
Oh, yes.
Which direct translates as a pipe of pork, which is basically a pork fillet because it looks like a pint.
Yeah,
pipe.
That makes sense.
So yeah, and talking about differences in food, Spain is no different to any other country in the world, I'm sure, where you are staying, the region in which you are, is going to dictate the type of food that you're eating. You're going to have very different food in the north or the south, very different food in Catalonia or Galicia or Basque Country. The coast is all going to be about fresh fish and seafood. The country is going to be all about great meat. And if you're a vegetarian, good luck to you, my friend.
They do have something, they call it calamares del campo, I think, which is onion rings. And calamari obviously is the rings around a calamari. So you can have onion rings. There's lots of potato dishes. Patatas pobres, I think, is one of the most famous ones. As far as I know, it's vegetarian, although they might use lard for it. I don't know.
You'd probably have to check. They use olive oil instead of lard, yeah.
But there are lots of things that if you are a vegetarian. And they're also fantastic at things like the gluten-free
They are, and the lactose free. Yeah, they're really, really good at that.
Really good at that. Okay, so the final thing in eating and drinking is that if you go to certain cities, Granada being one of them, is that your drinks will be slightly more expensive, but you'll get a free tapas with it. So you can sit down, get a pint, or you wouldn't get a pint in the UK, in Spain. You've listened to the last episode, but you'd get maybe a beer, and with that would come something, some bit of food. Now, the trick we learned, having been in Granada for a couple of months, was that the longer you stay in a bar, the better the tapas gets. So by the time you've had 4 drinks, they're bringing out, pieces of steak and stuff for you, whereas the first one might just be one of those tortilla, the potato and egg tart things. So it is worthwhile sticking to one place for longer. And Granada definitely does it. I'm pretty sure they do it someplace up in the north, but I can't remember exactly where.
Granada is such a good place to do that, though. And as you say, the tapas gets better with each round, and then you're going to get different places that are known for different tapas, and you can just go onto this, just Google it. You always find a website that will kind of run down what it is that they specialize in, and keep your eye out as well for different towns. I think Tarifa does one that's like a tapas route, where then each restaurant in the select restaurants within the town will produce like one great tapas dish, and the idea is you make your way through the route of restaurants until you've tried them all.
Another one that does that, just incidentally, is Valladolid, in just north of Madrid. And that's apparently where tapas was invented, and they have a ruta de tapa, which is a very similar thing.
Yeah, so I think that's enough about food and drink. If you do want to go back and listen to that previous episode where we talked a lot more about food in Spain, it's episode 77, 13 Ways of Spanish Will Know You're a Tourist.
Definitely worth a listen. Okay, so we're on to language next. So I think the first thing about language is that people will say goodbye when they see you. So hasta luego, which is shortened to ta luego, see you later, or until later. Often people walk past the friends in the street, and they'll just go ta luego as they walk past. And what they're saying is basically, literally, until later, which is what they tend to say goodbye. But that's what people will say as they walk past.
I guess it's like us saying, all right.
Yeah, all right. See you later.
See you later.
But it still sounds weird if you walked up to your friend and went, and they said, see you later. You went, see you later.
Yeah, but then it's like, who are we chatting to? Maybe it's one of our American friends that they couldn't get their head around the fact that we go, you all right? And we're not asking how you are. Don't answer that question directly, because that's not what we're asking. So it's probably a similar thing saying "Hasta luego."
Definitely.
So I guess the other thing in terms of body language, perhaps, the kisses, it can be a minefield. Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? Some places in France apparently have 5. From our experience, it is 2 kisses, typically between women and women or men and women. And the embrace gets more familiar as you become more familiar with the person. So typically it'll start with a handshake and 2 kisses, then maybe a shoulder hold, and then maybe just a big old cuddle and 2 kisses on the side.
Okay, so the next thing I've got is learn a little bit of Spanish and try it. You're going to get it wrong a lot when you first start off. Don't be worried about someone repeating back to what if you ask for una cana instead of canya, then don't be afraid. They might say back to you canya. They're not correcting you. They're just confirming they've understood. So just try it. Most people are brilliant. Weirdly, the further towards a tourist area you get, the more annoyed they're going to be about you trying to speak Spanish to them, because they're busy, they haven't got the time, and they're going to speak English a million times better than probably you do. So certainly much better than when you can speak Spanish.
Exactly, yeah. So don't be put off if you speak Spanish and someone speaks back to you in English. The fact is they've understood, they're just busy. Speaking of Spanish, it's like any country. I'm sure there are different dialects, there are different accents. Some are easier to understand than others. We spent a lot of our time in Andalusia, which is known for being one of the most difficult places to learn Spanish. So if you are heading down to Andalusia to live and work abroad, or even for a holiday, just bear that in mind. One of the biggest things they do is they drop their S's on the end of words, and they'll push words together. So instead of saying dos más in terms of 2 more, they'll say doma. And this kind of goes through, you'll hear gracia instead of gracias. And it's fine when you're in that context, you know what they're saying, but it can get really confusing if you think you're hearing a different word and you're trying to figure out what that is. Don't be afraid to ask people to speak more slowly. We've done that and they're very willing to help.
Lento y claro, por favor, is slowly or slower and clearer. And again, they won't mind with that. And then if they don't, if they disagree with that, or if you just don't want to, say that you don't understand, have a little guess at what they might say. So you're picking up, you say, can I have a bottle of water, please? And they look at you and go, blah, 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 blah. You might go, they're probably asking me if I want glasses and ice, aren't they? So you can also guess a little bit rather than going, I have no idea what you just said. Just hazard a guess. So in that case, you might go copas and sí. Quieres copas.
Yeah, it's looking out for the nouns, isn't it? Those words are vocab words that you probably learned more of, and picking up on them and trying to put it together. But that said, one does have to be careful because there are some words that sound very, very similar. For example, when we were in the police station at our residencia a few years ago, a policeman approached us and Al told them that he was waiting for his albóndigas, which means meatballs. What we actually wanted to say was that we were waiting for our abogado, our lawyer. So do be careful. And there are some that could actually cause offence. Al, I think you have an example on that one.
Yeah, I don't know quite what the nuance is between actually saying this word, but if you've got a drink and you want a straw, then you'll ask for una paja. But if you chuckling already, apparently a paja also means a little bit of manual stimulation for a man, or possibly a woman as well. I don't want to say the word because it is quite crude, but yeah. So asking for a paja could mean you get a straw or you get a lovely 20 minutes. I don't know. Another one is like bandejo, I think, which is tray, and I think there's a very, very similar word. It might even be bandejo, which means arsehole. So I think so. But generally, be in the context, people will think that you're trying to be polite.
They'll giggle and correct you, I'm sure. And talking about correction, as I'm sure you know, if you are starting to learn a bit of Spanish, or you know some already, masculine and feminine is a thing in Spanish as it is in other romantic languages such as French. So you will notice the ends of words changing depending on whether that word is masculine or feminine, if you are masculine or feminine. So you will hear una versus uno, ella versus él, and so on. And then you also get into the tricky conjugation of verbs if you really want to dive into it, where the ending will actually change. So rather than saying I want, she wants, it's quiero, quieras, etc. But that's further down the journey. If you're just going for a holiday, don't worry about that too much for now.
And I think what else is interesting, just to add to that, is that some words like solo means only, so solo bebida, so only drinks, and then sola means alone, which is obviously a similar meaning, but it's interesting to see that you can change the end of it, like trato is deal, and trata, I think, is some kind of like horrible sex ring or something. I don't really know. Someone once told me that. So so just be aware of that. Okay, so I think we've covered probably 50% of this. What we've got left is we need to talk a little bit about next week about transport. We need to talk about the weather and living, going shopping, and then the things we can't get our heads around in Spain and the things to avoid, which we'll be doing in episode 81, which will be coming next week. So you're just going to have to sit tight and wait for it.
The suspense. It's a cliffhanger.
It's like when Helen Daniels went to Tacoma on Friday night in Neighbours. You're like, I can't wait for the whole Monday to find out what happens with Helen Daniels. Well, that's a reference from 40 years ago, isn't it? Anything else to say before we knock this on the head?
No, I think, again, if you have some of your own quirks that you've experienced or things that you think we might have got wrong or right, get in touch, let us know. To recap, we've covered culture, eating and drinking, and language. So yeah, you can email us at asidewayslife@gmail.com or on Instagram, asidewayslife.
Okay, we'll see you next week for part 2.
See you next week.